We can now go across to France 24's James Andre, standing by at the offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris's 11th arrondissement. James, what's happening where you are?
Well, the ceremony here at the Charlie Hebdo former headquarters has just ended. The officials have been moved to Boulevard Richard Lenoir, which is right next to this building I'm standing in front of, and they are paying the respects to Ahmed Merabet, who is a police officer who tried to stop the Kouachi brothers as they fled the scene of the attack here at the Charlie Hebdo headquarters and was shot by them before they indeed fled in their car and eventually evaded police and Paris, launching the beginning of what was a massive manhunt across the country. Now, the ceremony here was a solemn one with no speech. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, was there, as well as former President François Hollande, who was the president when the attack took place 10 years ago. The objective, of course, was to pay respect to the 12 people who were assassinated in cold blood by the Kouachi brothers with an assault rifle when they stormed this building behind me 10 years ago.
James, Charlie Hebdo was a paper that was struggling financially before the attacks in January 2015. The newspaper continues to ruffle feathers, cause offense to different groups. How is it doing today?
Well, the newspaper, as you know, today has published a 32-page special. Charlie Hebdo has widely become a symbol in France, if you will, of freedom of speech, the right to blasphemy, and this is very much what is in the point of these ceremonies here 10 years down the line. What happened here 10 years ago caused a lot of emotion here in France. That very evening 10 years ago, thousands of people assembled at the Place de la République here in central Paris in order to show support for Charlie Hebdo, who had already been attacked just a few months prior to this attack here at the headquarters. Now, Charlie Hebdo still exists indeed, but it's important to note that members of its editorial board are under police protection, that the headquarters of the newspaper is a closely kept secret, that inside the building there is actually a bunker where the journalists can take refuge in the case of a new attack. So, of course, yes, it is a symbol of controversy, of a certain form of freedom of speech indeed. And it's also important to remember that later down the line, 6 years later in 2020, there was an assassination of a teacher, Samuel Paty, who was, explaining what had taken place 5 years prior here, indeed, in this attack that you've got to remember launched a cycle of violence here in France, which probably culminated with the Bataclan attack that took place just a few blocks from here, and there, well over 100 people were killed in a multi-pronged attack across Paris. So, this was a shift in French recent history, what took place here, and was very much the beginning of an era of violence that hit France for over a year.
I want to talk about that era of violence with you, James, because, of course, 2015, this country experienced so much. You had the attacks, obviously, in Charlie Hebdo in January 2015 and at the kosher supermarket. But subsequently, in November, you mentioned the Bataclan attacks. It really shook this country. And then we also had the Nice attacks, let's not forget, the following year in 2016. So that really, these events, these attacks at Charlie Hebdo's offices really kick-started a very dark period for France.
It's absolutely a very dark period. As you can remember, the Islamic State group had proclaimed a caliphate in Syria at that moment. You've got to remember that if you take, for example, the Bataclan attacks, they were coordinated, organized, and put in place from Raqqa, Syria. At the same time, France was indeed part of an international coalition in order to end the Islamic State territorial control in Syria, a coalition that is still active. And just weeks ago, the French Air Force dropped bombs in eastern Syria on positions of the Islamic State group, which, of course, with the fall of Bashar al-Assad, everybody is worried that they might, seek to regain control over parts of Syria amidst the ongoing chaos in the country as things reorganize. So, yes, these attacks were the beginning of a cycle that shook France to the core. I remember back in the day after the Bataclan attacks that were, that came after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, and a series of, I'd say, lesser intensity attacks in France, including an attack on the Thalys, but also the attack on the Bardo Museum in Tunis. Of course, that was not in Paris, but still, this era of terrorism shook the French public, and in the wake of the Bataclan attacks, there was a sense of shock across the country and a real psychological effect, if you will, on the population who was, worried and weary of what was happening. And this is where we saw security levels heighten across France. It's where we saw police reorganize in order to face this new menace, and also, basically the intelligence services ramp up in order to be able to face and thwart these attacks that indeed multiplied over the years after what happened here 10 years ago.